Sorry, mate, I literally can't understand a word you're saying, but I'm sure it's fine. It sounds great, so probably all right. Tenet, the new film from Christopher Nolan, is out in cinemas now. Well, in some places. Due to COVID-19, cinemas remain closed in towns and cities all around the world. But for now, they're open in the UK, and I got to go out and see a new movie on release for the first time in 5 months.
To do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
I'm not saying Armageddon here.
No. Something worse.
John David Washington is a spy working for someone, the CIA, I'm not really clear. After dying on the job, he's reawoken and sent on a new, ill-defined mission, seeking out the truth behind a single word: Tenet. That's literally all I can say without spoilers, so if you're continuing beyond this point, then fair warning to you, okay? I recommend seeing the film fresh. If you haven't seen it already, then maybe don't watch this bit, no matter how keen on it you are, okay? Spoilers. You ready? I warned you. Okay, so as it turns out, Tenet is a password into the shadowy world of a temporal Cold War, where nefarious forces from the future reach back into mankind's history, manipulating certain people like malign Russian arms dealer Alexei Sator into doing their dirty work. It's the protagonist's role, that's literally what Washington's character is called, by the way, to fight back and forward. See what I did there? Last pun, I promise. All of this is communicated extremely quickly in a very rushed first half hour. From an opera raid in Kiev to a tower block in Mumbai to a restaurant in London, meeting new faces and learning new names all the time, a huge amount of information is crammed into this very short period. My screening also didn't have great sound, which exacerbated that feeling of being a bit lost in the story, and not in an immersive way, in a I don't get it way. Then the film hits its stride with a fantastic set-piece heist in Oslo and begins to settle into a bit of a groove. Here you can watch a 747 ram into a building as a mere distraction, and you start to remember that Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker with a fantastic eye for scope. I've said before that set pieces are a bit of a lost art in modern blockbusters, and I think Nolan's work is the real exception to that rule. He seems to know it as well. Much like Inception's confusing layers and timescales mask a relatively straightforward heist story, Tenet's complicated chronology is hung around 3 big set pieces: the Oslo heist, the Tallinn ambush, and the final battle, which helps the viewer to keep everything in order. And boy do you need it, because I have to say I had no idea what was going on in a lot of this film. I think I'm a pretty attentive film viewer. I read a lot of sci-fi, so this is stuff I'm vaguely familiar with, and I've seen all of Nolan's other films, but I was totally lost about 30 minutes into this. I started thinking about all the times that I've spoken to people who feel like Nolan is so into his own ideas that one day he'll disappear up his own arse. Maybe that day has come, I thought to myself, sat in the cinema with my mask on, fogging up my glasses. But then, just as I was losing patience, the film's reverse chronology started to kick into gear during the Oslo heist, and things started to fall into place. For me, that moment of doubt was a very wobbly moment indeed, and it means that ultimately Tenet's not my favourite bit of Nolan work. I think it treads a tightrope between tremendously clever and isolatingly self-indulgent, and it manages to stay upright, but wow, does it ever like looking down at the drop and thinking what would it be like to fall down there. This problem began for me pretty early on when Clémence Posey had the unenviable task of explaining the central conceit of the film to the audience. Luckily, this section also contains what I think is a pretty good guide for the rest of the viewing experience. After showing the protagonist, that's so convenient, isn't it, the effect of reverse chronology gunshots and talking through what inverted causality looks like, she tells him, "Don't try to understand it. Feel it." And the success of the film for any individual viewer, I think, will rely on their ability to accept that central rule. That's Tenet, if you like. It's good, isn't it? Good bit. Plan that one. I decided I would try and consciously do just that. Just feel it, rather than worry about understanding it. I felt confused, I felt paranoid, a bit adrift and unsure who to follow, and strangely enough that reminded me of another film experience, watching Thomas Alfredson's 2011 film Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which coincidentally was also shot by Hoyte van Hoytema. That film also chucks a lot of plot at you in the first 30 minutes and expects you to do a lot of legwork to keep up. It casts its lead in a murky shadow world where allegiances are unclear and the enemy seems to have the upper hand all the time. And it's shot through with paranoia, as any good Cold War film is. So despite all of the obvious comparisons between Tenet and Bond, you know, with its globe-trotting and sharp dude in an even sharper suit, what it really reminded me of is Le Carré. It's got the requisite brutalist architecture with an opera house covered in Cyrillic and secret bases secreted inside a wind farm. Even sunny Italy is offset with industrial areas in Oslo and Tallinn. It's not just the style though. I think for Nolan, all of the tricksy chronology of Tenet is a shorthand into the stale beer world of statecraft. Plans carried out by unwitting pawns are necessary to keep info from the future. Paranoia is justified as just the merest hints of a war to come are available. And removed from evidence, spies operate simply on the strength of their own convictions. Very clever stuff and well suited to a Nolan protagonist after all. For me, all of Nolan's leading men, and they are all men, aren't they, are fanatics of a sort, hell-bent on a single goal through pure exercise of their own will. In Interstellar, it's the will to reach beyond Earth. In the Dark Knight films, it's Bruce Wayne's drive to avenge his parents. Here, it takes on an almost religious tone, an act of immense faith. The protagonist's job is to fight a war without obvious participants or skirmishes. And although events seem to be set in stone, it's his drive that ultimately creates the events he's already experienced. As Neil says, we're just an expression of fate in the mechanics of the world. Now, putting all that analysis and actually, you know, understanding the plot to one side, and I am over-egging it a bit, it mostly does make sense, even if some of the finer causality is beyond me. What you have is essentially a ripping yarn spy movie. Big explosions, car chases, multiple heists, and buddy comedy between charming, dapper dudes. John David Washington proves yet again that he is undeniably a star, effortlessly commanding the film with great passion and a light touch of humour. Elizabeth Debicki takes a role that could be a little limp and turns it into something altogether harder-edged. And Robert Pattinson slides off a run of intense drama roles, really, to play something a little bit lighter, with this impeccable transatlantic accent and a slight bit of foppishness. All those boys in the Batman trailer comments surprised that the guy from Twilight can act will have their worlds rocked by this movie. And watch The Lighthouse, by the way, you Philistines. On top of all that, Hoyte van Hoytema's sterling cinematography is less emotive than Interstellar, but as steely as Dunkirk. And underneath it all is Ludwig Göransson's bombastic score, reading more like an over-electronic Zimmer soundtrack with plenty of playful, reversible, palindromic elements. And if it's a bit hard to understand, well, consider this. The world's biggest blockbuster filmmaker is using his not inconsiderable time and money to make broadly formalist experiments in narrative chronology under the guise of popcorn cinema. And that's a real gift in itself. All of which is to say, Tenet is a good film, and if you can focus on feeling it rather than immediately understanding it, it is tremendously entertaining, and most, if not all, becomes clear soon enough. That's right, like a fox on a trampoline, I was perplexed by the experience, but ultimately I enjoyed it. That's it from me, but with a movie as wild as this one, I know there's going to be lots to discuss, so let's have a chat in the comments below. And while you're here, consider doing a big old subscribe, leaving a fat like, and maybe sharing this with your mates or posting it on your social media to get those discussions going. Every little bit of engagement helps boost the channel. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Yes, yeah, was nice enough. Yes, no, when that's enough.
Hey, Will, just wanted to check in with you. I think this backwards bit maybe doesn't work, so maybe we shouldn't have done it or do it. Does that make sense?